and for the case against sugar. So I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and excuse all the little technical glitches.
We're getting used to Zoom, and Daron's doing amazing. I'm very thankful.
I'm getting zoomed.
Okay, baby,
Let's
roll.
So we just want to start our webinar tonight. Stay tuned, because at the end we're going to give away, we're going to give a special out and special offers at the end, and we want to keep this interactive. So if you have any questions during the seminar, you're welcome to email the questions at info@hannanwellness.com. And I'll answer the questions. We'll answer the questions at the end of it. And we got a couple of offers in, and we're going to do the best that we can to answer all those questions. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started.
Okay. There's so many mixed messages about sugar, and there's so many claims. There's a lot of sugar drama, and it can be really confusing. So tonight we want to make some things clearer to y'all. And we can be sure of one thing: as a nation, we're consuming way too much sugar in our diets. According to the USDA, the average American consumes 150 to 170 pounds of sugar every year. And that's kind of wild. That's a quarter to a half a pound a day, or it's 30 to 60 teaspoons. And we can say, wow, that's way too much sugar. And here in Louisiana, we also find ourselves on a couple of top 10 lists that aren't really great lists to be on. One is that we're in the top 10 of all obese states. We're also in the top 10 of the laziest states. And we're amongst the highest states regarding adult diabetes rates, and we're also amongst the highest states regarding adult heart disease rates. And sugar really is a key player. So let's jump in and see why it's bad. By the way, the American Heart Association's daily recommendation for sugar intake for adult males is 9 teaspoons per day, which is 37.5 grams, or about 150 calories of the total calories that the male eats from sugar. The female is 24 grams, which is about 6 teaspoons of sugar or 100 calories. For children and teens, they should have less than 5 grams of added sugar a day. So the actual intake of sugar and what's being consumed is really quite different. So sugar hide and seek. Sugar is added to a lot of foods that many of us wouldn't expect. It's really found in about 75% of all the foods that's in the store. And we may not be aware of all the foods that it's found in. If you've done a low sugar diet, you've probably been more aware of checking labels. But sugar is in things like ketchup, barbecue sauce, tomato sauce, marinades, salad dressings, yogurts, breads, protein bars, peanut butter, soups, canned foods, cereals, oatmeal, frozen dinners. It's in a lot of things, and food companies have found if they add sugar that the food is tastier, and then of course more people buy it. And the food companies have kind of tuned our taste to sugar. And of course, the more that we like the food, the more profitable their companies are. So we do need to start looking at labels. I mean, we've even noticed that in chicken broth, if you buy chicken broth in a box, it contains cane sugar, which is absolutely unnecessary. So one of the reasons why we may not recognize sugar in our diet is because there's a lot of sugar aliases, and rarely will it say sugar actually on the package. There's a lot of things that you might find instead, and it would be things like dextrose, maltose, glucose, fructose, corn syrup, corn sweetener, sucrose, sorbitol, sorghum syrup, agave nectar, carbitol, evaporated cane juice, galactose. So there's a few tips in finding sugar. One is that if you look for os or ides, words that end in OSES, os or ides, IDES, those are generally sugar. Those are generally substances that are sugar. There would be things like maltose or dextrose.
Glucose, fructose.
No, we already did that one. Or glycerides or monosaccharides. So the second thing would be that ingredients are often listed on packages in descending order by volume. So I hear people say, I wouldn't eat a food where sugar is in the top 3 ingredients. But the problem with this is that there may be 4 to 6 sugars in the package. Maybe none of them are under the name of sugar. And if you multiply or add up, the different ingredients, they're actually sugars just under aliases. The sugar may be the most abundant ingredient in the package. And then, of course, we also want to check the grams of sugar in the ingredients area. And those are all tips to find sugar. So we're gonna post a sheet in the clinic at each of the front desks called The Many Names of Sugar. And this will help your detective work be a little bit easier. So what is the big deal with sugar? Well, sugar is directly causatively correlated with things like type 2 diabetes and obesity and dental caries and fatty liver. And there's a lot of ongoing research in terms of the effect of sugar on humans in other categories. But the problem with excessive sugar is that most health problems from sugar don't manifest immediately. And often health problems emerge. And when they do emerge, the patient doesn't always correlate them with high sugar. Things like allergies, joint problems, depression, immune disorders. Individuals may have problems like that, but they don't always correlate that to a high sugar diet.
I heard that it said that if they're doing so much sugar that it has pharmacological effects on you, that means the sugar starts to act like a drug in your system.
And that's true. When you think about people taking in 150 to 170 pounds of sugar, that's actually like eating as much sugar as the size of a human. But anyway, so we need to be more proactive, and congratulations that you're on this call, that you are going to be more proactive. So the best way to understand why and how sugar is dangerous is to first know what it's made of. So on the slide is table sugar, and table sugar is actually what is called a disaccharide. It is equal amounts of glucose and fructose. So every molecule of table sugar, also known as sucrose, is a molecule of glucose and a molecule of fructose. Now, glucose is our body's preferred energy source, and it's metabolized by most cells in the body. Fructose differs in chemical structure from glucose in that it isn't digested or metabolized. It isn't metabolized in most cells. It's only metabolized by the liver cells. And its end products of metabolism include triglycerides, the forming of triglycerides, uric acid, and free radicals. So of all the three of sucrose, glucose, and fructose, fructose is the sweetest of the three. And it's the most commonly added to foods in the form of high fructose corn syrup. Now, all the sugars have the same amount of calories per gram, and there's 4 calories per gram for all of the different sugars. So we eat sugar, And when we eat sugar, our bodies produce insulin. So our pancreas actually produces insulin in response to the sugar that we eat. And insulin is important because it's the hormone that actually binds to glucose, and it gets glucose entry into our cells. So when we eat sugar or a carbohydrate that actually digests into sugar, the insulin picks up the glucose, and the glucose then is attached to the insulin. And then the insulin gets it, knocks on the cell membrane, gets it entry into the cell, and takes it into the mitochondria, where it can be metabolized and made into ATP for energy. So when a person eats excessive sugar, the insulin that's being released becomes excessive. And when it's overproduced, the cell no longer allows it entry. And this is called insulin resistance. And when a person is becoming insulin resistant, there's two really strong red flags that are associated with that. One is that the individual starts to become very tired. And in addition to becoming very tired, they also have a waistline that is expanding. And then insulin also creates a problem when it's in excess, and that is that it hinders weight loss. Like, in other words, when a person gets to a place where their insulin is overproduced, they're heading into what's called metabolic syndrome. And when metabolic syndrome has occurred, the individual's rules for weight loss are altered in the body. Like, things don't work like they're supposed to. And metabolic syndrome basically is a cluster of a number of conditions, and it's dyslipidemia, it's high blood pressure, it's an elevated fasting glucose, it's an expanding waistline or waistband, and all these are coming from the same common denominator, which is insulin is elevated. And that is what is influencing the body. So we do know that sugar causes our weight to be increased. Too much sugar, too much insulin, increased weight. In the United States, 1 out of 3 kids and 2 out of 3 adults are overweight or obese. And, you know, it's like, besides sugar being empty calories that steal our nutrients and our energy, so not only is sugar devoid of nutrition, it actually steals nutrition from your body, and it causes weight gain. Sugar messes with other hormones other than just insulin. And it stops leptin from signaling our brain to say that we're full. And it also, it hinders the shutting off of ghrelin, which is our hunger cry. It's the hormone that says, hey, we're hungry. So insulin continues us screaming we're hungry, and it stops us from saying we're full. So people keep on eating, and they're tired, and they're putting weight on around their waist. So the only way really to help that is by changing the intake of sugar. And it really does make a difference, and you really can shift whether or not you're just metabolic syndrome or you've gone from there to type 2 diabetes. So something that I just wanted to mention is that for children, there's a 60% increased risk of obesity for every daily serving of sugar-sweetened beverages in their diet. And we've already mentioned that kids really shouldn't be taking in that much sugar, and parents really need to realize for children, like, you're shaping their taste buds for the rest of their lives. So we want to be aware of that. So we'd also have to mention the liver. We've already mentioned that fructose is one of the main components of table sugar, and it's metabolized only by the liver. And the liver really can't metabolize it. It's not designed to metabolize it in large quantities. It's really just designed to do small amounts at a time. So that would be okay if sugar was used like it should reasonably be. But in the case of excessive sugar, the fructose is being turned into triglycerides. And triglycerides are actually a fat that's measured on the lipid panel. If you get your cholesterol measured with blood work, triglycerides is a fat. And when triglycerides are high, I always tell my patients, you know, that's the one that's easiest to shift. Like if you change the diet of all the cholesterol or lipid panel, triglycerides can be shifted pretty quickly. But the problem with excessive sugar turning the additional fructose into triglycerides, or the problem with just using a lot of high fructose corn syrup in products, is that the triglycerides need to rest somewhere. And besides resting into the belly, the liver will actually begin to store the triglycerides, and the liver enzymes can begin to rise on the blood work or get higher in the range of normal. And it's because the patient is headed towards the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. In addition to metabolizing into fructose metabolizing into triglycerides, there's also a metabolism into uric acid and more free radicals. And uric acid, of course, is associated with gout. And the accumulation of uric acid is what causes the gout attacks in joints. So an individual may say, wow, I didn't eat the things that I shouldn't be eating. I haven't been having organ meats or red meats or seafood or beer, but they may be ingesting a lot of sugar, and that's causing their uric acid levels to rise. So in regard to the heart, we know that excessive sugar creates the things that we've already talked about, dyslipidemia, which means that the good cholesterol, the HDLs, are too low and the bad cholesterol is too high. It also contributes to obesity, elevated blood pressure, met-sin, which is we've referred to already. And all these things are risks for cardiovascular disease. So when you think about heart health and you think about deaths from cardiovascular disease being very high in our society, I think a lot of people don't realize how related that is to their diets. And again, like we said, what's the big problem? People are eating sugar, they're not sick, and it's really because it's like this delayed response that occurs over a period of time, even over years. It's kind of like we withdraw from our health account over years and then we pay for it. So low testosterone in men is associated with guys that have big bellies. So the interesting thing is that a man with low testosterone actually has an elevated risk of cardiovascular disease. So guys might be tired and not performing the way that they want to, and go get their testosterone measured, and then go out and get exogenous supplementation of testosterone. But if the gentleman's belly is big and he's getting testosterone, it's a problem. And the reason is because the belly is actually an endocrine organ, and it's producing pro-inflammatory cytokines. But amongst the things that it's producing, it produces aromatase. And aromatase is an enzyme that causes testosterone to turn to estrogen.
That's
and
not good.
No,
I tell my patients when they come in, I said, if your belly bigger than your butt, you got too much sugar in your life.
and that's true. So if a man is producing a lot of estrogen from their big belly, losing their testosterone, they can increase their risk of breast and prostate cancer. And that can even be more dramatically increased if they're doing an exogenous supplementation and they're converting even more.
Can I do a station identification?
Yes.
I had a couple of people just join on. Listen, we want to keep this as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, just email your questions to info@hannanwellness.com. And I got the computer right here. And at the end of the presentation, we'll do the best that we can to answer any questions. info@hannanwellness.com.
All right, so thank you for interrupting this program. Boom. All right, so our immune system is also affected by sugar. There was a study that was done at the Loma Linda University, and it showed that 100 grams of sugar can make your white blood cells 40% less effective in killing germs. We've been in a huge flu season in the United States, and we want our white blood cells working for us and not against us. So be aware, 100 grams of sugar drops the effectiveness of the blood cells 40%, but then it also remains that way for 5 hours. And remember, I already mentioned at the beginning that the stats show that many Americans are getting 120 to 240 grams of sugar a day, which can be up to twice as much as what was needed to drop the immune system or the white blood cells 40%. So controversy is, how does sugar affect cancer? Does it cause cancer? Sugar has not been directly causatively correlated with cancer, but there's some really interesting research in the mixed messages that is coming forth. And it is very clear at this point that high fasting insulin, which is a result of sugar, doubles the risk of breast and uterine cancer. And in addition to that, there was a really interesting article in the American Chemical Society Journal last August in 2019. And the headline was, "How Diabetes Can Increase Cancer Risk, DNA Damaged by High Blood Sugar." So they found that DNA sustains more damage and gets fixed less often when blood sugar levels are high, thereby increasing cancer risk. So it's just another reason to consider maybe not choosing the cookies and the cakes and the junk food, and maybe picking up an apple or some berries instead. So sugar also affects our brain quite significantly. Studies have shown that sugar slows down the brain function, that it hinders new learning and decreases memory recall. There's also a strong correlation between high sugar intake and the prevalence of depression and anxiety. And foods rich in sugar disrupt the brain's neurotransmitters that work to stabilize our mood. Sugar is also correlated with brain inflammation, which is connected with dementia. And sugar is the main source of energy in our brain, which means that if our brain gets insulin resistant, meaning that the insulin can no longer get the sugar into our brain cells to make the ATP necessary to run our brain, we can run into what's called type 3 diabetes. And type 3 diabetes is also known as Alzheimer's. Now, there's a lot of research on Alzheimer's, and it proves to be a very multifaceted condition, but the high blood sugar is one of the strong factors that needs to be eliminated to help an individual have their brain functioning well. So are we addicted? Many of us would say yes. We can't conquer what we don't confront, and we can't confront what we don't identify. So here we are tonight, and we're identifying, wow, sugar has a lot of issues. So this is a start. It's identified. The good news is that there's a way out, but we have to be honest with ourselves. So let's talk about dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and it's responsible for controlling the reward and pleasure responses in the brain. When we eat a lot of sugar, a massive amount of dopamine is released in our brain. And if we continue to consume the sugar, the dopamine receptors become less powerful, and then they make the response less effective. So as a result, an individual wants to eat more sugar to get that same dopamine response. Now, dopamine is interesting regarding food. If you enjoy a healthy meal, a well-balanced healthy meal, you actually get a nice dopamine response. But let's say that you prepare for the week and you only made that one meal, and you eat that same healthy meal over and over again. As you do that, the dopamine response begins to drop to the healthy meal that's repeated. So too many days in a row, not good. The problem is that when we eat sugar too many days in a row, we actually don't get that response of a dropped dopamine. It would be great if we just got the response. We don't get that reward and pleasure response. It's like, oh, I don't want this, but it doesn't really happen. What happens is dopamine response continues. It's just that our receptors aren't as effective, and as a result, it makes us want more to get the same level of response. So sugar can actually sabotage our brains and make us want to crave it. So, sugar is very obviously negative for us and for our health and for our lives and for our families. And, I'm so thankful for the people that are willing to stretch out, to learn more, to understand more, to become more disciplined, because I know that it's not just about you, it's about the people that you influence. And kids in particular really need a healthy influence. We all do, but the kids are up against a lot with the food industry and all the ads and everything that makes them crave the junk food. So not all sugars really are created equally, and there are some alternative sugars. So if possible, make sure that you're reading the labels of everything you eat. And some things that I might say be careful to avoid, aspartame would be one of them. In 3 independent animal studies, it was clearly correlated with cancer. Aspartame is a chemical sweetener and is best known for its appearance in diet sodas. So beware of aspartame. It's really not good. High fructose corn syrup, we've already mentioned. And high fructose corn syrup where table sugar has 1 glucose molecule to 1 fructose molecule. High fructose corn syrup has more fructose than glucose in it. And we've already mentioned how harmful it can be to the liver. But in addition to that, it seems to be a source of mercury. And the mercury is pretty harmful to the body. I also would be careful about saccharin. Saccharin has been associated with increasing the risks of cancer as well. And some safer alternatives might be something like some non-glycemic alternatives, meaning that they actually don't affect the blood sugar, would be stevia or xylitol or erythritol, which are alcohol sugars. And the alcohol sugars can cause GI distress in some people, but if they're tolerated, they can be helpful. And monk fruit is also a non-glycemic alternative. Now remember that if you use alternatives to sugar, it may increase your cravings for sugar. I think you should just use them carefully. Other choices might be coconut sugar or raw honey, but they still are sugar. They still have 4 calories per gram. They're still added sugars, but they may have a little bit more minerals and nutrients in them, obviously, than the other sugars. So, you know, now it's like, how do we take action? Do we do it slowly or we do it all at once? And I think that really differs for different people. I think we have to figure out where our current status is and maybe how much sugar we take in every day, and then begin to work from there. Somebody that's doing 150 grams of sugar a day might take steps to begin to drop that and then get off of it. Somebody that might not be ingesting as much might just say, well, I'm going to get off of sugar and detox from sugar more quickly. I think cold turkey has its benefits. The longer that you go without it, the better that you feel, even though you may feel bad for a few days. And depending on a variety of factors, like including whether or not you drink alcohol, I think most people can expect to feel better in 1 to 2 weeks after quitting sugar. Now, I have some other strategies. There's some strategies that I feel could be helpful to getting off of sugar. First is drink a lot of water. And I think one of the ways that people ingest a ton of sugar is in drinks. And drinking sugar does not fill you up and make you eat less at a meal after you drink it. Actually, the research would say that if somebody drinks a sugary product, they actually eat more at the meal that follows that. And I think a lot of people kind of choose sugary drinks, and they don't even consider it to be calories in the day. It's just like, oh, a little something extra. I just want to give you a couple of ideas here, examples. Like if you're in the store, you're hungry, you need a little pickup, you want a little coffee, you pick up a Starbucks vanilla frappuccino, the little jar, like a little jar of coffee. It's got 45 grams of sugar in it. That's equivalent to eating 32 vanilla wafers. If you pick up a Sobe green tea, it's got 61 grams of sugar in it. You could have 4 slices of Sara Lee cherry pie. Not a good choice, but it just shows you how much sugar is in it. And this one knocks my socks off. It's McDonald's 32-ounce triple thick chocolate shake. It has 168 grams of sugar in it. And you could either drink that or you could get the same equivalent by eating 13 McDonald's baked apple pies.
13 apple pies.
So it's like, beware of what you're drinking and drink a lot of water. You might want to put cucumber or lemons or limes or strawberries in your water. I think it's important that you eat healthy fats. Like, I think it's important that you get good protein and healthy fats if you're trying not to do sugars. Healthy fats in particular decrease cravings and they increase satiety, meaning you're full. Things like avocados, nuts, and seeds. Love pumpkin seeds, love nuts. The low sugar nuts are almonds, walnuts, hazelnuts, and pecans. The higher sugar nuts would be cashews and pistachios. And when you're getting nuts or when you're purchasing nuts, make sure you purchase them without a bad oil. You never want sunflower, safflower, soybean, no omega-6 oils, which are pro-inflammatory. You just want a dry roasted good nut. So if you can't find a dry roasted nut, buy them raw and then take them home and roast them yourself. So the healthy fats will help with cravings. Fish oil should really be taken by every person on this planet. If you're not eating wild-caught Alaskan salmon 4 days a week, you need it, and so do your kids. That's a whole nother topic. But fish oil can help keep people full for 4 hours after a meal. So if there's a time when you crave sugar the most, I would take my fish oil after that particular meal. Really great research on L-glutamine. It's amino acid. L-glutamine can decrease sugar and alcohol cravings. The research would say take it a couple of times during the day, like 500 milligrams, 2 or 3 times, and maybe right ahead. Like if you get the great craving, take the L-glutamine at that time before you would give in to the craving. L-glutamine is a great gut healer, and it works amazing to help heal leaky guts, but it needs to be taken on an empty stomach if it's utilized that way. The protein element, I've already mentioned, get a good amount of protein every day. If you're vegan, make sure you're using a protein powder. I'm not really vegan, but I don't like a ton of meat, so I love protein shakes. I think using a protein shake that is sweetened with stevia or another non-glycemic sweetener that you can mix up without a ton of fruit in it, maybe some spinach in it, is wonderful and healthy and helps to curb cravings. Beware of the psychology of no. The psychology of no is really interesting. Studies have been done on functional MRIs, and the MRI kind of looks at the brain, and it looks at blood flow, and it looks at what area of the brain is working. And in the study, if the word no is flashed in front of an individual for 1 second, there's a sudden release of dozens of stress-producing hormones and neurotransmitters. These chemicals immediately interrupt the normal functioning of your brain. They impair logic, reason, and communication. So if you're trying to detox sugar and you think somebody's telling you no, it's really a negative place to be at. Instead, I would prefer that you reframe it and that you would say, I choose not to eat this. I can if I want to, but I choose not to because of these benefits. I choose not to because I want to stay younger. I want to have a healthier body. I want to have a better weight. I want my immune system to be better. Just changing the BMI in the body, the actual weight of the body, changes so many critical factors in blood work and makes health so much better. So instead of telling myself, no, I can't have it, I say I can. I just choose not to. I want to think clear. I don't want to be depressed. I have control over my health, and this food does not have control over me. And I think that's just a better psychology of how to address being confronted with the choice.
And my patients tell me after just 1 or 2 weeks on an ideal protein program, once they cut the sugar down, that the brain fog goes away, they have more energy, and they feel a lot better.
That's awesome. I see that definitely happen in individuals. So a couple other supplements, magnesium, and these can be somewhat status and situation dependent, but our society as a whole is suboptimal in magnesium. It doesn't get measured in people. Often when doctors measure it, they measure it in the serum. It's not reliable. It really needs to be measured intracellularly, and that's done through getting a red blood cell magnesium. But magnesium regulates glucose along with doing 300 different cellular activities, but it can decrease cravings. So, and magnesium is great to take at night. It's a muscle relaxer. It helps an individual relax and get to sleep. Another good supplement is a good Proflora. Balancing the gut microbiota or the flora is important to not crave sugar. And that also goes along with having a good gut Proflora so that there's not an overabundance of yeast, because yeast definitely want sugar to live. And it'll make an individual crave sugar. But there really is this balance of bacteria in our body. And if our balance is correct in our gut, if the balance is correct, it actually can stop sugar cravings, and it also can affect the extrapolation of calories literally from food. If a person has too many of one type of a microbiome, one type of bacteria in their microbiome, they actually can extract more calories from their food. Another one that's important in the fight against obesity and type 2 diabetes, although the mechanism isn't completely clear, is optimizing vitamin D. I see patients all the time whose doctors told them their level is fine. They base that on the norm with the blood work, which is 30 to 100 nanograms per ml. If they're at 30, they say you're good. The research clearly shows that the patient is best at 75. So it just makes sense to optimize it. I also would suggest that you remind yourself over and over again why it's worth quitting sugar. There is a pediatric endocrinologist. His name is Dr. Robert Lustig. It's Lustig. He has some awesome YouTube videos on the harms of sugar. And that would be great to listen to remind yourself why you don't want to be consuming so much sugar. You might want to get a partner for accountability. We have started a private Facebook group for the group of you that are trying to be a healthier tribe in 2020, want to be part of that. We want the people that are detoxing sugar or trying to get off of sugar to make comments and to interact with each other because it helps. Accountability makes a big difference. Get outside. This is another tip. Get in the sun. Sunlight is so important before 10 a.m. It's amazing for the body. And get your feet on the ground. We're on cement slabs our whole life under a natural light. It's important to get out in the sun, get your feet on the ground. It recharges your mitochondria. And then we all need to establish new dopamine reward pathways. So let's say that your habit or our habit right now involves seeing a brightly colored package and listening to enticing ads and picking up sugar-laden foods and opening the package and eating the meal. And that gives your dopamine response. There's a value in changing that. The value is you go to the store, you pick healthy organic food that you pick out yourself, and then you take it home and you prep it and you prepare it and you prepare a healthy meal. And this will cause a great dopamine response, and it's very rewarding, and you'll find yourself doing that over and over again. So develop a new dopamine pathway. So how are you feeling? I know I've gone through a lot of information. It may be a little bit overwhelming. Changing our eating habits is something that takes some energy and it requires effort, but it's incredibly rewarding. So we welcome you to do your best to interact with us. We're really here to serve you and to help you. We want you to have the best year yet of your life, and we want you to be filled with hope that all things are possible, that little changes can result in large changes. Little changes over time can result in large changes over a year of time. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. Do we have any questions, Daron?
Not yet. You can send your questions to info@hannanwellness.com, and I'm looking for that, or you can text them to me. I just want to make mention that we're going to give y'all an offer to everybody who joined the webinar tonight. We want to thank you guys for joining, and we're going to do a bundle, which is going to be a combination of a detox and a heart rate variability health scan, which is the new gold standard of health scans. And I'm gonna put together a bundle, and it's gonna get emailed out to you guys. So watching your email, because there's gonna be a good discount in there for you guys. And also, she made mention of the Hannan Wellness Tribe. Go to our Facebook page and join the Hannan Wellness Tribe Facebook page, because we're going to start a little information highway so we can find out what you guys want to learn about throughout the rest of the year, because we're going to be doing a webinar once a month for the rest of the year to make 2020 our healthiest ever. So I'm just waiting to see.
And the Hannan Wellness Tribe Facebook page will be the place where you'll post any comments from the emails from the sugar detox. So if you haven't opted in to get the emails for the 2-week sugar detox challenge, opt in, because people will be making comments about that on that page, giving suggestions, giving new recipe ideas. And if you struggle with stress eating, or you just want a good meditation involved in the pack that Daron's telling you, that we're going to have some inexpensive way to just kind of help yourself a little bit. We're going to offer Brain Tap, and in our Optimal Health series on Brain Tap is a sugar awareness meditation, which could be really helpful in your journey to try to break the added sugar habits.
And
so
just one question, they want to know, what diet do you recommend?
Oh goodness, that's interesting. What diet do I recommend? I think diets vary for individuals depending on where they're at. If a person, if a person does a lot of, if a person is diabetic or pre-diabetic, I might recommend one diet versus somebody that's just in general fairly good health and just wants to lose some weight. In general, for a general diet that's not trying to accomplish any type of weight loss, but it's trying to maintain good health, I kind of like a modified paleo diet. And I just don't like a lot of high-fat dairy that's in a lot of paleo, but I love a diet that's rich in lean proteins, lots of vegetables, and nuts and seeds, and a little bit of fruit. Even as we consider to do the sugar detox, I think a little bit of fruit can be okay, but make it things like berries and just keep it to a minimum while you're doing the detox, because it actually can cause cravings. So if you need help identifying the diet that is best for you, we're totally able to help you do that. And I think in Daron's little package from this program, he's offering a wellness consult, just a few minutes, like if you need some time just to get direction and strategy for yourself. He'll sit with you and help you and consult with me if he needs to.
And
so
somebody just said, this is incredible. Thank you. You hit every important point. They want to know if we're going to post this video so other people can watch it. So since you opted in, I am going to make the link available to you guys to be able to share with your family and friends so they can watch today's and also last month's webinar. So it's going to be a link with the webinar from last month and a link with the webinar from today. And we'll continue to answer questions in the next few days. So go ahead and email your questions to info@hannanwellness.com. And thank you guys for listening. I think I got one more question.
Yeah, thank you so much. We love helping people. We're here to support you. And this is what makes us tick. This is what we're all about. We want people to be healthier, and we want them to believe that they can have control to do that. Your life can be different a year from now than it is today. It's all about choices. And we all have choices in front of us every day. But listen, you can do this. I remember a couple years ago, when probably 8 years ago, when we were first starting a particular program, and I was like, Daron, and it had to do with very little sugar. I was like, Daron, I can't do this. And he looked at me and he's like, you got this, girl. We're going to rock this. And I just needed that encouragement. And it made all the difference in the world to me. I heard his voice over and over again. You got this, girl. We're going to rock this. So we're telling y'all, you got this. So we're going to rock this. We're going to rock it together. And we appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank y'all.
So have a great evening.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for listening. See y'all next month.
Bye.